Hi, my name is Jonna and I play football for Chelsea FC and for the Swedish national team. And you are listening to the Blue Day podcast.
Now, you've experienced so many sort of different ups and down stories of Chelsea, especially with their coaches, and they've had many coaches throughout the years. Was there a appointment that shocked you where Chelsea appointed somebody, and why? Plus, was there a sacking Chelsea did that perhaps made you a bit pissed off, a bit sad about the whole situation?
Managerial, most sackings did, because I just got on with most of the managers. I really did like a lot of them, and they were all working under pressure, and I felt that a lot. I insist on bringing out one appointment. It didn't surprise me because we all knew it was going to happen, but it really annoys me that the first press conference of Jose Mourinho is remembered for only one quote. And it was a brilliant quote. I am not of a bottle, I am a special one. It was a brilliant quote. But if you sat in that press conference like I did, there was an even more brilliant quote for Chelsea fans. Not for the worldwide media, not for social media, but there was an even more brilliant comment. Now, you've got to remember that we'd just gone through 4 years of Claudio Ranieri, saying, you can't make us favourites, we're not good enough, we're not going to do this. And we went into every competition in every season, always feeling as though we weren't taking it quite as seriously as we wanted to. And that was the way he was preparing us for our ultimate failure. And of course, Claudio built a fantastic foundation for Jose. But he never won anything himself, and that was always a drawback for him. Mourinho came in, and he said in this press conference, when I leave here, I want to have changed the identity of Chelsea Football Club. And I want the identity to be winners. 2004, he said that.
Now look.
Shall we list what we won before 2004 and since 2004? Those 3 years, 3 and a bit years that he was manager of the club, I don't think he's the same person now as he was then.
I agree with that.
Him. I'm one of the ones who fell out with him. I still get on with him when I see him. I still love him despite everything.
Was the fallout over players, or was it a case of something was perhaps said
over my interviews of him? But those 3 years, he changed our club like nobody else has changed our club in those 3 years. And what he did and what he brought to it, and the outlook on it. And he was, in those 3 years, he was invincible. He was unbelievable. And we are winners, and we still are.
Most of that occurred.
Sorry, I've got to answer your question.
Absolutely,
I've got to answer your question in one more way, because I kind of feel as though you might have been getting at something. And that's Rafa Benitez. I got into a lot of trouble over Rafa because I came out on the pitch and I introduced him, and he got booed.
I remember that vividly.
I had a policy on the pitch. Again, perhaps a little different from the policy now, but for me, the stars of what I was doing was the fans. Because obviously the players weren't on the pitch when I was doing my stuff. The stars were the fans, and everything. It was everything. You know, when you're on the pitch, you can't hold a conversation with 40,000 people. You can't. I always refuse to do interviews. Well, that's why I want to walk them around. You just take, the relationship is between whoever you've got out there and the fans. And that's why I always refuse to call the team, to name the team after the players had come out, because the relationship was supposed to be between the fans and the players there, not between the flipping pitch presenter and the fans. So when I never talked over singing and chanting unless it was by the opposition. I had a better line than them, which was always. But so when the fans booed Rafa, I just let it go until it stopped. But in fact, that was the night that we were remembering Dave Sexton, who had just died. So we were able to change the mood, and so it happened. But after his tenure, and Jose came back for his second time around, we were waiting for Jose to come out on the pitch before the first game of the season. And he wasn't coming because we were playing Hull, and he wanted to wait for Steve Bruce and walk out with him. And I was just standing there, and I looked round, and I suddenly realised that my face was on the big screen and that the camera was on me. So I just looked into the camera, and I never planned what I was saying. It was all from here, from my heart. And I just looked in the camera and I said, I'm rather more looking forward to introducing this manager than I was the last one. I was just thinking of the booing, really. It wasn't a personal dig at Rafa. Oh, my God. There was massive cheering. And did I get into trouble for that? But, I mean, Rafa got us to third in the table. He won us the Europa League.
Branner's last-minute goal against Benfica.
He was.
He did divide opinion. I think what probably didn't help him was the fact that he replaced Di Matteo. He replaced.
Flags. Yeah. Didn't apologise for it or didn't explain it beyond anything. But I think. Let me put it this way. The Liverpool fans adore him. You go and ask the Liverpool staff of that era whether they adore him.
Interesting.
I have nothing more to say.
No, I think we should move on. Incredibly, it's nearly coming up to 20 years. July 2003, in fact, a certain Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea from Ken Bates. I want to get your opinion on the purchase of Chelsea. Do you remember where you was when you first heard the news? Oh. And looking back now, how significant was that win the previous season against Liverpool on the last day was to the purchase of Chelsea?
It was essential. It was absolutely essential. I'm not at all sure Roman would have bought us if it hadn't been for that. So it was absolutely essential. Funnily enough, those 4 or 5 days when the search into due diligence was going on by his people, I was in the club. I can't remember why, but I was going into the club every day at that stage, and I knew there was something going on, but I didn't have a clue what. And a couple of other people who I was friends with, we all knew there was something going on, but none of us had any idea what it was. But it was clear there was something. And I was driving, I live in Kingston, and I was driving home from the ground. I was going around the Wandsworth one-way system, and my mobile rang, and it was Trevor Birch, who was chief executive. And he said, "Where are you?" So I told him. He said, "Is it going to be quicker for you to get home and work or come back and work?" I said, "Halfway, I'll go home." And he said, "I want as soon as possible. Don't ask why, and don't tell anyone you're doing it." But I think I can tell you 20 years on. I want an explanation of why we should keep Gianfranco Zola for a potential new owner. And I went home and I hammered out as quickly as I could this explanation of why we should keep Gianfranco. And one of the reasons that I put on there, by the way, was the success of Ruud or Glenn, but more Ruud and Luca, player managers who had gone from being just player to player managers, and that if things didn't work out on the managerial front, not only could Gianfranco be a player, but he might be someone that would be might be someone who would be considered for player manager. And I sent this off, and that was presented, I know, to the staff or to the Romance people as a reason for keeping Gianfranco. Gianfranco was contacted and told them that he'd already signed for Cagliari, and that he couldn't go back on his word. I truly believe that Roman tried to buy Cagliari that summer.
I did hear there was rumours in 2003 that Roman did try to do that. But it
didn't happen. And in the end, it was probably the right time for him to leave as well. He had 2 wonderful years at Cagliari, and he ended at age 39, and he was offered a contract until he was 40, and he turned it down. But it was probably the right time. So when the announcement was finally made, I don't even remember the final announcement, where I was or what happened, because it was, so that's what's been going on. It was amazing. And then we were just desperately trying to get Roman on Chelsea TV for the next month and failing totally.
Was you shocked that Ken Bates, who was part of the fabric at Chelsea for so long, obviously with financial burden perhaps being an influence, the fact that he actually left the club for so many years being there, and then all of a sudden Roman's come in from Russia, bought the club, and then we go on a huge spending spree that summer of 03.
Well, Ken didn't leave. He became he retained the chairmanship.
Because he stayed for a bit longer, didn't he?
And he went the following, I think, March.
Right.
And no, I was aware of all the breakdowns that were going on and everything that was going on behind the scenes. And in fact, the night that he announced he was leaving was at a dinner that I hosted. So I was party to everything that was going on, and the Roman side of the campaign of the project knew that it was going to happen, and were there and having conversations with me as well. And it was all very uncomfortable, I've got to say, but it was just Chelsea Football Club at the time. It was painful. It was very painful for him, but this was the new broom, and he didn't fit.
Talk about Chelsea, sort of fast forward. We mentioned that it's nearly been 20 years since Roman bought the club. It's nearly 10 years next year that Chelsea won their first European Cup. As you say, Munich 2012 against Bayern. Just looking back on that season in particular, how much of a crazy season was that? And, we talk about later on last season with Tuchel replacing Lampard and then end up winning the Champions League again. How bonkers season was that for 2011-2012, bearing in mind Ancelotti left, Villas-Boas came in, he fell out with players, he left, Di Matteo came in, results in the league, in my opinion, were pretty crap. I think we finished 6th or 7th. Sixth. We were nearly out of the Champions League after losing to Bayern, Bayer Leverkusen, which I went to, and we had to beat Valencia in the final game in match day 6 to actually qualify out the group. What are your memories of that season?
At the same time, Bayer Leverkusen were at Genk, who didn't lose at home in the group stage, and I always thought we were favourites to win the group, even going into that last day. Now, I'll tell you exactly what happened. The managers had lost control of the transfers at the club completely, and it was now run separately, which is how modern football clubs or how football clubs are run currently in the main. I feel that we had a series of disasters in the transfer market from when we won the double going on. And one of them, I'm afraid, loving, was Fernando Torres. And he came in and it just didn't happen. And in 2011, well, let's not forget that what actually happened was that we went out of the Champions League to Manchester United in the quarterfinals.
That's right, under Ancelotti.
After that, Carlo Ancelotti started leaving Fernando out of the team because he couldn't score a goal, and bringing Didier back. Didier now 33 years old. And we suddenly started winning. We went up to Old Trafford 2 games from the end of the season. If we won, we went level top with them.
That's right.
With 2 games to go. We were seriously in the title race. But there were a lot of reasons why Carlo went, but leaving Fernando Torres out on the side was maybe one of the main ones. So what happened with Andre Villas-Boas was he came in. I think Didier was injured at the beginning of the season. Fernando Torres played, and we were poor. We were just poor. It was a bit like Timo, couldn't score a goal, and we were just poor. And it's interesting that you went to the Leverkusen away, because that was the game where he suddenly threw Didier in. And Didier was hopeless. He hadn't trained properly, couldn't run. He was an old man. He was awful. But after about half an hour, he found some rhythm. And for about 20 minutes, he was the best player on the pitch. And he scored the opening goal of the game. And it was an absolute flipping worldie.
Yeah.
But then we lost 3-1. But he played the next game, and he slowly got his fitness back. And Valencia came down for that. That was match day 5, Leverkusen. Valencia came down match day 6, and he tore them to shreds. He absolutely tore them to shreds. And he scored 2 goals. We won 3-1. And by the way, the first goal was with his left foot. And poor Nando couldn't get the ball with his left foot. And we were on our way. But things started going wrong. Didier actually went away, I think, to the African Cup of Nations, if I'm not mistaken, and came back and was put straight back in the team by Andre. He left out Fernando Torres. He went. That was as much... Dropping out of the top 4 was one thing, but leaving out Fernando was another thing. He went. So Robbie came in, and Robbie played it very cleverly, and he ducked and dived between the two. Now, we all know that Robbie had become a close friend of Ken Bates at the end of his career, because Ken couldn't afford to pay him the insurance that he was owed because the club was in such a bad way financially, and gave him shares in Chelsea instead, which turned into something pretty damn profitable when Roman bought the club.
I'm sure.
And, Robbie did okay. So they had remained friends because they found a way of sorting out the financial issues between them constructively. So I don't think Robbie was ever an easy choice for Roman. And Roman told him, your job is to come in the top 4 when he took over from Andre. But Robbie only had a 1-year contract, and he wasn't really talked to again after that. So he was under the impression that whatever he did, he wasn't going to get another contract. So with a couple of months to go to the end of the season, he decided, to hell with the top 4. I'm going to improve my CV. I'm going for the Cup and the Champions League. Now, I think people aren't aware of what Didier's last 5 starts were in a Chelsea shirt. Now, I know he came back and had other starts after that, but to all intents and purposes, he left in 2012 after the Champions League final. And I don't think people are aware of what his last 5 starts were. But his last 5 starts were the FA Cup semi-final against Tottenham, where he scored that blistering opener with his left foot going around William Gallas in the top corner, 20 yards. Carlo Codicini, left foot again, world-class player. His next start was Champions League semi-final home leg Barcelona, where he scored the only goal of the game with his left foot from a cross that was going just behind him. His next start was the Champions League semi-final second leg away to Barcelona, where he essentially played left back for most of the game and was unbelievably brilliant. His next start was the FA Cup final, where he scored because he's Didier Drogba. And his final start was the Champions League final, where he scored because he's Didier Drogba. He did not start a league game in the last 6 weeks of the season. Fernando Torres started all the league games, which kept Robbie in his job. And we came sixth, but we won the FA Cup and we won the Champions League. And it was only after we'd won the Champions League that Robbie got a new contract. If it was pure luck, therefore, in this brilliant period of ownership by Roman, and it has been an absolutely brilliant period, but it was pure luck that we went and won the Champions League and reached his number one holy grail, because if he hadn't have separated himself from Robbie, I don't think would have made that decision that he was going to go after his CV. And it was a little bit of luck of circumstances. And it's quite ironic that Roman, who I do think is the best, as good an owner, I'm not going to say the best, as good an owner as there is of a football club out there, it is ironic that the other holy grail that was achieved of making us one of the most popular clubs in the world was done after the transfer ban, when we brought in all the youngsters and suddenly everybody liked Chelsea because we were playing a load of homegrown kids and we had an old legend as our manager, and it suddenly looked like a family, and that made us popular. People wanted to see Reece James and Fikayo Tomori and Andreas Christensen and Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham and Callum Hudson. They wanted to see all those players in the team. It made us a family. And I do think that's been our most popular period in the Roman era.
For years, obviously talking about yourself earlier, when you used to present somebody, an ex-player on the pitch at half-time, whether win, lose or draw, whether it was sunshine, rain or hail, you used to announce them, you used to bring them around the pitch. I remember sort of seeing them throughout the years, different players through the decades. How fun was this for you to do? And looking back now and comparing it to now, do you feel that the club is missing something by not doing that again? Or do you feel that the club have just sort of looked at that and gone, that was then, this is now?
I don't know. I mean, before I was finally ditched off the pitch, they created a match day experience committee. I mean, come on. And I remember going to a meeting and being told this is about how making sure that the fans go home. It doesn't, the result doesn't influence how much they've enjoyed themselves when the fans are going home. And I use the F off phrase then. I mean, come on. It was something that I did by chance. We were making a presentation to Frank Leboeuf, and I got Steve Clarke to make it. I think he was a youth team coach at the time. I think it was for 200 games. And Clarkey came out. He was youth team coach, and he'd, of course, been a central defensive partner in 97 when we won the FA Cup. And Frank Leboeuf came out, and the crowd was singing his name, and he went off and did a walkabout on his own. And Clarkey was absolutely fuming at me and said, "I'm never coming out with you again." By the way, can we just say that the reason Steve Clarke wasn't the worst dressed manager at the Euros was Luis Enrique, but we won't go any further than that. He did this walkabout, and it just occurred to me then and there, this is a relationship between the player who the fans loved, and it was almost, I'll tell you what it was brilliant, because it was him going around and everyone saying, "Hi, how are you?" That's what it was. And my whole aim of going around was simply, hi, how are you? And people seeing them up at close quarters again. And all the players that used to say, oh, I'm not into that. I don't want to go around being the absolute, this is who I am. I said, you're not going around saying this is who I am. You're going around saying, hi, how are you? Thanks for supporting me all those years. How are you? Lovely to see you. That's what it is. And that's how I treated it. And that's how I think most people who did it treated it. It could be electric, obviously. It wasn't always, but it could be.
I want to talk about your departure from the club now. It was in July of 2018 that it was announced through social media. And again, this was completely out of the blue.
By me, not by the club.
Yes, yes, you was the one who it was your first tweet. It was your tweet that sort of sprung the surprise that after 32 years service, you would no longer be working for Chelsea. Did they give you any reasonings after the fact, or could you perhaps shed some light on what transpired? Well, what conversations were there, and why did you leave on such controversial terms?
Well, TV just stopped using me. There was no decision made. They just stopped using me because I was always freelance anyway. And they claimed afterwards they didn't even know they'd stopped using me, which you make of it what you will. And I had a meeting with them in which they said, give us a suggestion of how you can work with old boys and we'll consider it. The last two legends that I did, which were Ricardo Carvalho, which I went to Monaco to do, and Damien Duff, which I went to Dublin to do, I've been edited out of the program, and they just had my questions off mic. In fact, just using the television mic, the camera mic in the background, and it stopped being an interview. It stopped being a conversation. It stopped being something in which two people were discussing this legend, and I didn't want it. It was an insult as I saw it, but it wasn't an insult. It was just them moving on, and I've been there a long time, and it was a liberation, to be honest, and I just felt the time was right for everyone. As far as the pitch was concerned, it had just become. I'd stopped enjoying it. Because there were just so many people who wanted to get involved, and at the beginning, Roman had said to me when I'd said to him once, I want to do this. Is that okay with you? When he was down the training ground, and he said, "You're in charge of the pitch. Just get on with it." And I was able to do things, and I made decisions, and that had been taken away from me massively, and I was very uncomfortable with some of the things that were going on. Every player who got to 300 games got a presentation. Every overseas player got to 200 games got a presentation. They stopped all that. That happened. Eden Hazard got to 300 games and 100 goals around the same time and didn't get a presentation for either. I mean, did you want to keep the guy? Well, maybe for 100 million euros and no games for Real Madrid. Yeah, but maybe not. But this guy was one of our greatest players ever. And I didn't think... to me, it was all about understanding those significant moments. And when we signed Nando in 2011, January 2011, our first game, or his debut, was at home to Liverpool.
That's right.
And they were really, really concerned about crowd trouble and everything else. And I was being phoned and emailed and God knows what all week, being asked what I was going to say on the pitch. And the thing is, I'd have an idea of what I wanted to talk about, but I didn't plan what I was going to say. It was not off the cuff, but it was intuitive. And of course, I thought about what I was going to say, but it's like a stand-up comedian. You get out there and you do what you do, depending on your audience. And I keep saying the only job is to hit the back row and to get the fans going. That was all it was. So about 15 I actually had to write out what I was going to say. And about 15 minutes before I went on, I got a text from, I can't remember who now, and it was relating to what had happened the previous night. And the previous night was Newcastle 4, Arsenal 4. I don't know if you remember that game when Arsenal went 4-0 up and Newcastle came back. And I looked at this and I just thought, brilliant. So I called the people running the big screen and I said, I've been told to give out an announcement. I need an extra 30 seconds because everything was timed now for the big screen. I need an extra 30 seconds. And the guy on the big screen said, what's it for? And I said, never you mind, I've just been told to give it out. And he went, all right. And he gave me the extra 30 seconds. So I went out there and I said, I have a very important announcement to make. And the ground went quiet because they do when you've got a microphone, when you say that. And I said, this is a police message. A man went missing in the city of Newcastle last night by the name of Arsene Wenger. And there was a massive cheer from both sets of fans. And I said, if anyone knows of his whereabouts, they've set up a hotline. The number is 0800 04 14 24 34 44. And everyone went crazy. And there was loads of singing and everything. And for me, that was my job. Everyone was singing. Everyone was on the same song sheet as well. And then I did the teams and the Torres boom. But actually, there was quite an air of bonhomie. 5 minutes into the game, I get a phone call. Now, that in itself is evil. You do not phone me during a game. I am watching the game. But I get a phone call. And I was asked, why did you say that? I said, say what? Why did you tell that joke? I said, because it was funny. I said, what was the point? It could have caused a riot. I said, caused a riot? It brought unity. Yeah. Everyone was enjoying it. It brought unity. And this person said, you were told to play this with a straight bat. I said, I did. I just didn't play a forward defensive. I stroked it through the covers for 4. Times had changed. And that was 2011. And it still went on till 2018. Times had changed. And I went out one game, I don't remember what it was, but it was a League Cup tie. And I said, when you look at this game on media, general media, and see that it's not a full house, I'd just like to point out that Chelsea have sold all our tickets. Welcome to whoever it was, I can't remember who it was. Just a shame you couldn't sell yours. And I was actually congratulated after that by the communications department for bringing it to light. Well, I did the same thing for Fulham about 3 years later and was perhaps a little bit more harsh because it was Fulham down the road. I got absolutely hammered for doing it. So there was inconsistency. But hey, you know, it's a big club. It's got big departments. It's how it is. And we've just won the Champions League again. So I'm not complaining.
Final question on it. If the chance ever came up and there was an opportunity for you to return to Chelsea, would you consider it?
As owner?
Anything you want.
I'm a power freak. I've got to be in charge.
Right.
Would I like to sit on the board as one of these new board representatives? Absolutely no way, because you've got no power. So what's the point? You're just a listener. No, that doesn't interest me. Time moves on. I had a great time. Let me say this. I've got a huge ego because obviously I couldn't have done what I've done without it. And I love it. I loved it all. And I love looking back on it, but I'm a guy who looks forward. And one of the best things that has happened to me in the last few years is going back in the crowd. I just love being at away games and being back in the crowd. It's everything that I fell in love with in 1959, and it's still as brilliant. And if the UEFA just keep their bloody corrupt hands off the details of our game, and if idiots stop trying to form super leagues, and just understand the genius of this game and how it goes from the streets, the back streets to the Alliance Arena in Munich, then people will enjoy it for generations to come, and that's what I love. That is what I love, and I'm still a bit of a geek. I still keep records and stats. I now go every away game. I've got a farm shop near every away game, and I buy all my food organically and bring it home. So I need these away trips in order to eat well. That's why I still look so young at my age. And it's that's what I am. I'm pretty comfortable where I am. But I just want to say about Lee Parker, who took over the pitch from.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
He's an absolute gentleman, Lee, and he called me, and he kind of asked my permission. Really, he made sure I didn't feel bad about it when he was asked to do it, and he's an absolute gentleman. Support him.
Because he got a lot of backlash when the news was sort of found out that you obviously left and he was going to be taking over. Not a massive amount of fans, but there was a small cluster of people that was sort of complaining about the fact that
he's not doing the same thing. I think he's following a pretty tight script. And,
yes, I was there last home game against Leicester. He was obviously the man in charge, and as you say, he's been pretty much told what to say rather than being spontaneous. And
it's just where company life is. In the 21st century, that's how it is. There is a reason that people are so disenfranchised from politics in this country and in America. And I've got a great relationship with the United States now because I've got a radio program over there. And it is that politicians lie and are led into lying by communications departments, and it's just how it is. That's not Chelsea. That is business life.
Just a couple of more questions before I do eventually let you go, Neil. Something that I haven't done yet, so you are the first person that I'm going to do this to, is a word association. So I'm going to say a few names, and I would like you to provide your opinion on each one. Would that be okay?
Yep.
Perfect. First one, Glenn Hoddle.
Genius who brought our club into the 1990s and made us play football again and attracted top-class players again.
Mason Mount.
I've got really strong opinions on Mason. First time playing when he was 15. He is an out-and-out, brilliant, potentially world-class number 8, midfielder, number 8. His pass for the winning goal in the Champions League final was a number 8 pass, not a number 10. He was deep, he looked up, he saw a gap, and he played in the moving player. That was a pass worthy of winning the Champions League. I don't think he's ever been a number 10. Having said that, in the last season, I think he's added a yard to his game. I think he's a little bit. He can now move past someone in a way he couldn't before. He can't really get away, but he can. He's added a yard to his game, which has made him a better player again. And he's added a trick to his game. Well, not one trick. He's added a number of tricks to a game so that he can beat a player and get away. So he's more of a number 10 now than he ever has been before. So maybe the coaches were right and I was wrong. But for me, put him in the midfield because he's the best bloody midfielder in the Premier League after Kevin De Bruyne. Why did we ever sell him?
I think we can talk for hours about how we got rid of Kevin De Bruyne and even Lukaku as well.
Mohamed Salah. Flipping it.
Dennis Wise.
The rat. When I started Wimbledon Club Call, the first person I interviewed was this kid I'd never heard of who didn't go off on pre-season with the rest of the club because he'd broken his arm or his ankle or something. And I sat down on the step at Plough Lane and interviewed an 18-year-old Dennis Wise. one of the most underestimated technicians in Chelsea's history. He could pass a ball with both feet. He could pass quickly. He could pass long and measured. He was an outstanding midfielder. And everybody remembers Gianfranco's sensational goal in Stockholm. But they need to remember Dennis's pass to him. It was a first-time clipped half volley, an absolutely wonderful pass. He was a truly outstanding midfielder. I don't think he was a born captain. I think he had to learn captaincy, a bit like Cesar Azpilicueta. But he became one of our greatest captains. A marvellous personality who improved with every new big signing. And one of the dirtiest bastards who's ever played for Chelsea.
That pretty much sums him up. Frank Lampard.
Lamps always has a go at me because I always said to him, I said it to his face, that in his first season, he really reminded me of John Bumstead. Now, that's not a criticism. John Bumstead played 409 games for us, was it? Something like that. But John Bumstead was a terrific servant who very rarely gave the ball away, but didn't always necessarily do an awful lot with it. And I always thought that Frank at West Ham was a better player than Jamie Redknapp at Liverpool because he had more product to his game. He scored more goals, made more goals. Redknapp was a good player, obviously. I'm not putting him down, but Frank. And in that first season, it was a big move for him. It was a massive move for him. And he just added something every game, every year, right up to the end of his career. He added something. He was the most brilliant self-teaching player ever. But it wasn't just self-teaching. He'd get coaches out to help him, and he'd get people out to help him. And he became the best midfielder in the world without any shadow of a doubt for a long, long time. What I would say about the people who said the whole issue, which I kind of think slightly shadowed his England career, that he couldn't play with Gerrard. Of course he could bloody play with Gerrard. That's why Chelsea wanted to sign Gerrard. What they meant was he couldn't play 4-4-2 with Gerrard, with the two of them in central midfield. And we had this problem that early on in their career together for England, Wayne Rooney came along and he could only play in 2 up. He couldn't play 1 up until late in his career because he simply wasn't that kind of a player. So all of a sudden, you couldn't play 4-3-3 and shove a Makelele or a Xabi Alonso between Gerrard and Lampard. You had to play some other shape, and all the managers kept the 4-4-2, and it didn't work. But to be fair, Gerrard very rarely played central midfield in 4-4-2 at Liverpool. He was either pushed to the right wing, or in the end they went 4-2-3-1 and played him number 10. Lampard was somebody who scored more goals than Gerrard, who got more assists than Gerrard, and who basically was a better player than Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard was a Hollywood player who carried Liverpool on his back, and he had so many great moments that you call him a great player. Frank Lampard was constantly great, but had the great moments as well.
Ben Andrews.
Chelsea TV, Ben Andrews.
That's it, yes.
Better than most commentators on television at the moment.
I'll second that.
And by the way, I want to take that a bit further, actually.
Okay.
As we talk, Martin Tyler is 75 years old.
Wow, I did not know that.
Ian, 75 years old, and has spent the pandemic driving to away games on his own because because of social distancing. In the north, he lives near the training ground in Cobham, near Cobham, and driving back through the night in order to be ready for the next game. Ian Darke, who is the sort of number 2 commentator on BT, but easily the best commentator on BT. He's about 68 now, 69. Clive Tilsley, who, as we've all found out during the Euros, is the best ITV commentator. He's about 65, something like that. What's going on with commentary? And the young ones who come up don't seem to be always the best. Ben should be doing more.
Don't get me started on Jermaine Genius.
Oh, please. I think you can. I'm with you.
No, don't, because we'll be here for another 5 hours.
But if you want to go on about Jermaine Genius, we might as well go on about Steve McManaman.
Oh, I'd rather not. No, definitely not. Jose Mourinho.
Changed our club. Best manager we've had by a distance. First time round. Changed football. Changed football. He was the manager more than anyone who made analysing the opposition, exploiting weaknesses, negating strengths, an essential part of all management. He was the one who dragged management into a 7-day-a-week, 24 hours a day job. And therefore, in many ways, he's as responsible for anyone in ensuring that managers no longer have much of a say in recruiting players, because the job's just become so massive. But it changed football. It didn't change football on the pitch. It changed, which Pep Guardiola's done. It changed football off the pitch. And not many managers can claim to having done that. I think that his coaching, which was just so entertaining for the players, all the players first time round just loved his coaching sessions. So innovative. But I don't think his coaching ever had an attacking plan,
right?
In the way that Pep's has an attacking plan, and Klopp's has an attacking plan, and Conte's has an attacking plan, and maybe that's where he struggled in recent years. But you do need the players, as he keeps telling us, and even Thomas Tuchel can't get a goal out of Stone.
Yeah. Ken Bates.
Well, I mean, some people stab you in the face, some people shake your hand and pay for someone to stab you in the back. What's the difference? Hey, he lived our football club. He lived it. He wanted the best for it. He fought for the best for it. And he did it his way. And if it wasn't always palatable, it was always for the club. And he should be remembered as a chairman who took over when we were down the bottom of the old second division and left us in the Champions League with a few trophies in the cabinet as well. And he also brought a period of sexy football in the late 90s that was possibly as attractive as any period in our history. He should be remembered for the football.
Yes, I agree with that. Ron Harris.
He made Dennis Wise look clean. I mean, Chopper tells a great line when he does his after dinner speaking, and he says, "People ask me if now, when you can't tackle, if I would survive in today's football," and I say, I probably wouldn't even make the end of the warm up. He was a winner. But he was hard. He was really, really hard. I kind of think that he's mellowed in his older years. When I did finish with Chelsea, he was one of the first people to phone me up and tell me how sorry he was and everything. Ron Harris has just been a great servant to our football club. He didn't always do it prettily. He can get very opinionated at times. He is somebody who I will always agree with, because however much older than he is than me, which is only a few years, I would always lose. we are the better for him.
Absolutely. Gianfranco Zola.
He didn't change Chelsea, but he transformed us, and was just one of our greatest ever players. But he transformed attitude. You know, one of the things that Ruud Gullit introduced as manager, which really pissed off a lot of people, was he had pre-training technical work for people who weren't good enough. And that was a lot of the young players who come through the ranks who weren't good enough. And they kind of objected to, they felt picked upon. They had to come in half an hour early and do this technical work. As soon as they started doing that, Franco turned up voluntarily and did it with them. And that changed their minds pretty damn quickly. And then, in fact, so did Dan Petrescu. And the two of the greatest technicians this club has ever had. It was just brilliant. Franco was just... I think there is a line. I think there is a DNA line, a Chelsea DNA line that goes Charlie Cook, Pat Nevin, Gianfranco Zola, maybe a little bit Ian Robin, and Eden Hazard, and just those guys that elevated the game to something technically beyond what anybody else could do. And Franco, I mean, 2 feet. 2 feet. Did anybody really know whether he was right-footed or left-footed when it came? I mean, it didn't matter to him, did it? He wasn't messy, but he wasn't far off.
Final one, John Terry.
The best captain we've had. The best defender we've had. Arguably the best player we've had. The best winner we've had. Not always his own best friend, which has maybe coloured how some people have seen his career. But for me, a good friend, for a lot of people, a good friend. And just, I went down the training ground one day. I was trying to get an interview with Michael Bannock. I can't remember what for. Well, it'd been for TV, I think. And this would have been April 2008. So it was a time when I wasn't free to go down the training ground and do what I wanted, and I had to. I had already been restricted, and I had to set up in advance. And I got down there, and I found Michael, and I said, "Are we okay to do this?" And he said, "No, I can't. Sorry, I've got to go." I said, "Oh, right, really?" And he said, "Yeah, we're all going to Frank's mum's funeral. John Terry's told us we all have to go." Michael Ballack said, "John Terry's told us we all have to go." That tells you not the power, but the presence that John Terry had in our club. And let us not forget that the last time we won the league was 2017. And he may not have been playing, but he was still in the dressing room. And Antonio Conte said he didn't want to lose him. He wanted him to stay because of his presence in the dressing room. In the end, however good a player he was, we missed him most as John Terry, the captain.
Thank you for going through the descriptions of those players, and fantastic sort of to listen about John Terry. And as you say, he's been labelled as Marmite. Some people like him, some people hate him, but I think many Chelsea fans, no matter what, will still see him as captain, leader, legend.
Absolutely. Can I just say about Wisey that I didn't say? It was him who introduced the singing for new signings. And,
I've heard about
trainings.
this. Yes,
it was him who introduced it, and it was it's something that's carried on and gone to other clubs. I'm sure I'd never heard of it in any other club when he introduced it, and. I was present when Gianfranco, Luca and Robbie did a three tenors and I can tell you it was bloody awful.
They were better on the pitch than with a microphone. Neil, I want to talk about current events just quickly, if we can. Something that a lot of people umming and ahhing about, some of them find it very, very tough to watch, is VAR. And I know, you've sort of mentioned it on a few sort of podcast episodes in the past about VAR. Just sort of quickly, what's your overall opinion on VAR?
VAR is brilliant. The people who run it shouldn't be allowed near football. Obviously, as the pitch host, I got to know referees. I have very strong views about referees. I don't think they're normal.
Right.
How do you become a referee? You become a referee by joining a referee association and going down to your local park and refereeing games as a teenager. What makes somebody want to do that? What makes somebody not want to play the beautiful game, put on a different kit, run around, blow your whistle and order people around? Those people, the best of them, become the full-time referees years down the line. Who chooses them? Well, the referee societies choose them. And who runs the referee societies? Ex-referees. It's the most insular, in-house, separate organisation from the rest of football imaginable. Now, if you take it up to the highest level, at FIFA, EFAB, which is the board that decides on the rules of the game, is chaired by David Ellery, who completely mismanaged our 1994 FA Cup final as a referee when we lost 4-0 to Manchester United. Now, David Ellery is someone who's overseen the change in the offside law, the change in the handball laws, all these things that are completely irrational about our game. And a lot of the referees that I've come across have been arrogant, have been short-tempered, and I go back to when referees were made professional. And my question at the time was, yeah, I understand that you make them professional so they can be full-time and they can concentrate on improving. But why is nobody asking what makes a good referee? Why has there never been any research into what kind of person we want to be a referee? Not by ex-referees, but by other people. I've heard some brilliant suggestions as to how officiating the game can be improved. And every time they're shouted down. One of the most stupid things I'll give you was when FIFA allowed the Premier League to run an experiment, bring in the rugby rule, where if you don't withdraw 10 yards, a free kick is moved forward 10 yards. And if you remember, that was experimented with for one season and in the Premier League and then rejected by FIFA. But what FIFA did, which rugby didn't do, because they're just a bunch of stewards, was they booked the player who hadn't withdrawn 10 yards. So you stopped the game. Rather than making it quicker, rather than benefiting the team who have been breached by the standing in front of the ball or not withdrawing, moving it forward 10 yards and taking the free kick 10 yards further forward. No, everything has to stop so that this wally of a ref can wave a yellow card at someone and take his number. I mean, it just slowed it down. It was an absolute disaster. And someone came up with a brilliant suggestion that a referee shouldn't have to send someone off for 2 yellow cards. He can do if it's 2 tackles from behind, but he doesn't have to if it's kicking the ball away twice. And you can get up to 5 yellow cards, a suspension in a game before the referee sends you off. And it's down to the referee's understanding of the game and integrity as to whether or not he sends him off, because a game should be 11 versus 11. And I put this to an ex-referee once. She said, oh, no, we've got enough responsibility on our hands without having to deal with that, because you don't love the bloody game. All you're in love with is refereeing. And so we finally get to VAR, and they've made the game about themselves. They have made the game about themselves. Offside law. This was a Ken Batesian thing, by the way. Ken was right about this decades ago. The offside law was introduced to stop forwards getting an unfair advantage. It was to stop goal hanging. It was to make the game entertaining. It was to make it fluid. It wasn't about a steward getting a thread out and deciding whether or not somebody's toenail, or as it turns out, elbow, is in advance of the last defender. It's not what the game is about. And why doesn't the attacker get the benefit of the doubt anymore? Why can't we just have daylight between the attacker and the defender? And the European Championships, if it's shown anything, has shown that other countries deal with VAR much better than England does. And England has a real issue with it, and we have a real issue with our referees. And I know it was always the thing to say that Howard Webb was a Manchester United supporter. Howard Webb was one of the few referees who was a normal bloke, and he was a bloody good referee. And that's why he refereed the Champions League final and a World Cup final, which went a bit wrong, but he wanted to keep 11 versus 11 on the pitch. And I thought he was thoroughly dignified in the way that he refereed that game. And since then, some of the refereeing, and some of the decisions and the way they're made is not for the benefit of the game. I have a terrible admission to make, and I apologise to everyone who doesn't like Arsenal. I'm not particularly fond of them, but I don't hate them, because I don't hate anyone in football, because I can't stand all this hatred, social media and everything else. Well, I hate Leeds, but I'm from the 1960s, so it's different. But I think that Arsene Wenger, who's just joined EFAB, the committee, in the last 6 months, I think they should wipe everybody off EFAB and let Arsene Wenger dictate the game for the next 2 or 3 years. Excuse me. Change the rules as he wants to, because he's a football man. He's not a bloody referee. So for VAR now, what I would do, I would have 3 people making the decision on VAR. Yes, an ex-referee for the rules, an ex-player for the understanding of the game, and someone with an IQ in advance of 10 to compensate for the other 2.
Okay. Interesting. We shall move on. Neil, your thoughts on present-day Chelsea? Now, as you say, before the pandemic, you was going to games, you was enjoying the atmosphere. Last season, Chelsea had another bonkers season, which ended up winning the European Cup. But as a fan and as somebody who has been,
I still sit in the press box.
Part of the furniture.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
My feelings on Chelsea are that we've got a wonderfully deep squad, but we haven't got a balanced starting 11. And under Frank Lampard, we were scoring lots of goals and conceding lots of goals. And under Thomas Tuchel, we weren't conceding any goals, but we were scoring very few goals either. We deserved to win the Champions League. We only conceded 2 goals in the knockout rounds. We were dead lucky to come in the top 4 in the Premier League. We were the 8th top scorers in the Premier League. We need to have a balanced squad. And I do feel still at Chelsea that a lot of the recruitment is a bit like playing FIFA. I mean, it's just it doesn't seem balanced. I went in Conte's second season, and people may forget that the only 2 years we haven't qualified for the Champions League under Roman. One was the Jose Gus Hiddink season, but the other one was Antonio Conte's second season.
Yeah,
and we. Over Christmas, New Year, he'd obviously grown impatient with the squad, Antonio, and he didn't like we didn't trust certain people. And Eden and Cesc were playing every single game. And we got to the middle of January, and we played a home game with Leicester, and we drew it 0-0, and it was quite a damaging result. And after about an hour, he took Eden and Sesk off because they were just clearly exhausted. And I think he put on Willie and Pedro. And that night, I went out to dinner with a number of people, one of whom was Fabio Baldini, who, in fact, I sat next to. Now, Baldini, if you remember, was Capello's assistant for England and was the director of football at Tottenham when they sold Gareth Bale and bought all those players in, when Villas-Boas was the manager of Tottenham. And he said to me, I watched your game this afternoon. I said, yeah, oh, were you there? He said, no, I watched it in my hotel room. I said, well, it wasn't on television, so you must have watched it illegally. But that's be as it may. But he said, do you know where the game went wrong for you? And I said, tell me. Now, this is a football man talking, and I just think this is brilliant, what he said. He said, if you'd have had Diego Costa still at centre forward, it would have been fine. Because all your players, your creative players, want to turn inside and thread the ball through. And all he wants to do is run onto the ball and smash it in the net. But you had Alvaro Morata playing.
Yeah.
Because obviously Diego there. And he said, and therefore, you need somebody to turn outside, go around the back and cross the ball. And if you cross the ball 3, 6, 9 times, he'll score you 1, 2, 3 goals. But if you keep threading it through to him, he won't. And that is the difference between recruiting by statistics and understanding football. I don't believe Antonio Conte wanted Alvaro Morata for 1 second. People say, but he signed him for Juventus. No, he didn't. He was signed for Juventus, and that was the summer he walked out. He never managed him for 1 game.
No, because he walked out, I believe it was the first day of pre-season, I think.
It was 2 weeks before the season began.
Oh,
and they got Maxi Allegri in then, and Alvaro and Juventus got to the Champions League final. Now, Alvaro's got to 2 Champions League finals. He's not a mug. With 2 different teams, with Juventus and with Real Madrid. He's not a mug. But he is a very particular kind of player who needs a very particular kind of service. And he wasn't suited. Now, Conte wanted Lukaku with us.
Yes.
And of course, if you thread the ball through to Lukaku and he's running through on goal, he's not that different from Diego Costa in his style of play. And that's why he wanted it. To see, so I feel very strongly that we're still recruiting by stats and not enough by VI.
Interesting insight, and I personally believe, I think there's going to be a lot of people that will agree with you on that. Neil, final question in what has, for me, been such a fantastic insight of listening to Chelsea stories over the years. How do you look back on your time at Chelsea?
I look back on it more than anything as a supporter. When I was, all the years I was working there, no one probably who worked with me, apart from people who were really close to me in terms of producing the programme or that really, will believe this. Easily the most important part of the job to me was simply watching the game for 90 minutes. Easily the most important. I'm addicted. I'm totally addicted. I don't believe that football is a marriage. I don't believe that it's a love affair. I don't believe that it's family. I don't believe any of that crap. It's the best addiction in the world. False highs, false lows that are really hard to get in the same way in any other part of life. How do I look upon it? The best bloody addiction I've ever had.
And you're not the only one to have the addiction, because we all can't wait to return to Stamford Bridge for the new season, most definitely. Neil, before I do eventually let you go, obviously you've got an Instagram account that you've been showing off your cooking skills. It's received quite a lot of good feedback at the moment, so it'll be interesting what you conjure up for us for the semi-finals and indeed the final itself.
Yeah, no, I've always done all the cooking at home. I love cooking. It's one of the few activities that clears my head, and I love ethnic cooking. I really like traditional cooking from around the globe, and I work a lot with Americans at the moment who think that if it's not Italian and it's not steak, then it's not food. And I was at an event in Las Vegas just before lockdown. Christian Pulisic said in an interview I did with him for American radio, he said, I said, "How have you adapted to English food?" And he said, "I just try and eat American whenever I can." And there was a debate on my radio show over there as to what exactly American food is. And in the end, the biggest vote really was sort of Southern Texan almost, with Southern fried chicken and all that stuff. But I was at an event some years ago in Las Vegas with Chelsea fans, in fact, in which the subject came up of what exactly American food was, which is something that I told Christian actually off the interview. And the answer was, it's take whatever recipe you like, double it, but quadruple the meat. So I won't be doing that. I'm glad USA aren't in this tournament.
Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure, and in fact, it has been an honour to have you on the podcast today. I've absolutely appreciated your time, and again, as I said, hopefully we'll see you down at the bridge again once fans are properly allowed back in. So just want to say thank you very much for your time, Neil, and all the best.
Keep the faith.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.